Welcome to the YouTube channel of Michael J. Swanson. Michael is the author of How David Beats Goliath and is the CEO of Advocate Capital. And now, here's Michael.
Hi everyone, Mike Swanson. Today's topic, credit cards. Now you might be wondering, why am I bothering to talk about credit cards relative to the funding of a law firm? But believe it or not, there is a significant number of contingent fee law practices that use credit cards to fund their operation. In fact, at Advocate Capital, we see a significant number of law firms who, either at the firm level or at the guarantor level, have $50,000, $60,000, sometimes over $100,000 of credit card debt, and is often spread over many cards, sometimes as many as 10 or 12 credit cards. Not something I recommend, but it's a reality, so I spend a little time on it in Chapter 11 of my book. Well, as you might imagine, credit card financing is a fairly expensive form of financing for any business, and it is that for law firms. We're seeing rates right now for credit cards anywhere from 12 to 20%. If you're not in default, of course, you miss a payment, they can sometimes run the rates up very high. There are a few positives to using credit cards. Look at it fairly. First, they're fairly easy to get, so there's no net worth requirement. If you have a decent credit score, you can normally qualify for a credit card. And they're fairly easy to use. You can use them to pay many types of vendors and services, sometimes even your rent. But there are other negatives in addition to the cost. There's a fairly high administrative burden. If you can imagine maintaining 10 or 12 credit cards, you're getting 10 or 12 statements every month and you're having to write 10 or 12 checks. That's obviously not a very efficient form of capital. There's also the danger of spiking rates. If you do miss a payment nowadays, many credit cards have in their fine print the ability to run the rates up as high as almost 30%. There's also a risk of fraud and abuse by credit cards fairly easily, sometimes by employees because they're so easy to get and use on the internet or over a telephone. Lastly, many times we've seen over the past few years that credit card companies will actually reduce the limit on the card unilaterally without notifying the cardholder. And that's a negative because if you think you have $10,000 of availability on your $20,000 card and the bank turns around and lowers your limit to $12,000, well, you've lost all that availability, but also the proportion of your credit being utilized goes up, right? So the problem with that is that it affects your credit score. So we've seen many times over the past few years where banks unilaterally reduce the limits on cards and credit scores go down even though there's been no change in the payment history. So a lot of problems with credit cards. If you're a law firm using credit cards extensively like that, get some dependable advice on how you can get access to better capital in the marketplace. Well, that's all for now. Stay tuned for more updates soon.
Thanks for watching. Send your questions or comments to Michael at mike@howdavidbeatsgoliath.com.